Okay, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who filled out the survey. There was a lot of good feedback on there. I read through a lot of the responses earlier today, and there's some things that I'm going to make an effort to start implementing right away. So, yeah, thanks to everybody who took the time to do that. Just wanted to give a few announcements of things we got coming up on February 27th. We have a panel of former launch coders. So all people that are working in tech or tech adjacent fields like Scrum. We got, I think, 6 people, all of whom I had the pleasure of knowing at some point throughout the courses. And so it'll be a good medley of people sharing their experiences and what they did after Unit 2 and after career readiness and what their experience was like. Other than that, oh yeah, also I'm gonna be at Code Till Dawn. I'm gonna make an effort to try to show up there with the launch code stuff. So if you want to head out and go to events, if you see me there, I'll try to wear a shirt or this hoodie or something. But yeah, I want to chat about the course or anything else about coding. And we have assignment 3 open. So if that was open, I think last class, but I don't believe I made an announcement about it. So would be a good time to start looking at that if you haven't already. And for those who are behind on assignments, we still have time. But I will just be checking in with people periodically to make sure that we're keeping a good pace. And yeah, we want to see everybody succeed. So don't hesitate to reach out. And that's about all I have. Thank you, Carrie.
Absolutely. Thanks, Colin. Okay, let me get my screen back up here and we'll do this quiz. All right, looks like we got 30 in climbing. So if you want to get in on the fun, go ahead. This is going to be a short one. There's only, I think, 6 or 7 questions. So a little shorter than usual. But we have a lot to cover tonight, so. Cracks me up watching you guys, you know, shifting your little avatars and stuff. It's funny. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, but you can always jump in if you'd like to. True or false? The program will stop running if an exception is thrown unless it is anticipated by the developer and handled in the code. It's true. It will crash and burn. So this is why it's important to think ahead about what types of things could possibly happen, and get it handled in the code. All right, Matt's in the lead. In Java, exception handling should take place inside what? Good job. Try catch block. You got it. All right. What is the correct way to raise a general exception in Java? Gave a lot of time on this one. Ten seconds. Person. Okay, good job. Yeah, throw new exception. The new keyword is important because you're actually creating an exception object of the exception class. And then you are using that object to access some of the methods of that class and such. So yeah, throw new is what you want. All right, Adam jumped into the lead. Multi-select. The build.gradle file specifies how Gradle should integrate which four of the following? A couple of you answered flux capacitors. I love it. Okay. Yeah. Configurations, dependencies, plugins, and repositories. I kind of gave that one to you guys, but I was, being a little bit silly. Okay. What is the debugging process? What order is it? Good job. Yeah, you set the breakpoints before you run it. Then you run it in debug mode, and then you can step through the lines of code, inspect the values, put in custom expressions, all that kind of stuff. One more question. What does this button do in the debug pane? Okay, so that is the correct answer. It allows the code to continue executing normally until it hits another breakpoint so that you don't have to continue to just step through one line at a time, which can be helpful if you have breakpoints that are, a couple, or like a ways away from one another in terms of the number of lines of code that have to be executed. Okay. Third place, Chris launch code. Second place is Ian. First place is spotlight even. Maple, good job, Maple. DC and Z are the runners up. Okay, great job, guys. Okay, let's go ahead and get into lecture. We have a lot to talk about tonight. You're learning like all the things about Thymeleaf in one class. So standard format here, Thymeleaf are HTML templates for Java web apps. That's the deal. So, oh, I think I still have the announcement slide skipped inadvertently, but that's okay. I don't have any announcements other than what Colin already covered, but it'll be in the slides if you want to look at it for reference later when you download the PDF. Okay, so we're going to talk about templates, how they work in Spring Boot. We'll talk a little bit about the general syntax with Thymeleaf, so you can get comfortable with that. And then we'll kind of go through different ways to do things with those attributes and such for, displaying data dynamically, looping, using conditionals, how to manage forms, something called fragments, and linking to static resources like CSS and JavaScript and images and things like that you have as part of your project. Okay. Here we go. So when you use templates in Spring Boot, you are going to put all of them inside. You can organize them however you'd like, but you want to put them all in source/main/resources/templates, just like it shows on the right. And you can kind of see there, I've got, an index.html and a fragments.html directly in the templates folder. And then I also have a subfolder collection that has 2 HTML files in it. And they are HTML files, even though they are Thymeleaf. So as long as Thymeleaf has been added to your project as a dependency, you can just add this XMLNS:/th, which stands for XML namespace attribute to your HTML tag, just like it shows here in this little picture. And that will make sure that that template knows that that syntax is allowed and will function accordingly. And one thing to note is that kind of like that meta tag that you see there in the head, anytime you have a self-closing tag, Thymeleaf will enforce using that slash at the end for self-closing tags. So just make sure you always remember to put that in there, or it will complain at you. Okay, so as far as the controller part goes, it's like, okay, great. So I can create these templates, I can put all my HTML in there and set everything up. But how do I actually get the template to the browser using a controller? So instead of returning plain text or HTML the way we did a couple classes ago, you're going to return the template name, or if it's in a subdirectory, it'd be, location/name. And since Spring Boot already knows to look in templates, all you have to do is give it whatever the path is after templates. But you don't want to use that response body annotation anymore, because otherwise the name of your template or your path is just going to appear on the page in the browser as if it was text. So you'll be, we'll kind of look at converting everything so that things display on the page from the template passed through the controller. So we're going to do a lot of live coding with the project. I'm going to kind of continue with a version of what we started a couple weeks ago. It's just going to be a little simpler to start with, and we're just going to focus on the Thymeleaf stuff. So you may remember this little website that I had started for an art gallery, right? And the idea is that we might display the collection on the page and all of that. So all I've really got, I've still got the gallery controller and I've got the collection controller that has the /collection page here, the content for that. And it has the form, which I'm now calling add, because specifically the idea here is we're going to be able to add the names of the artworks to the collection. I mean, ultimately, we will be adding a lot more than just names, but we're not there yet. We're going to get there a little bit at a time. So for today, we'll just do the names. We'll keep it strings. It'll be simple. And so, you know, this looks familiar, right? Because this is exactly the way that we did it the last time we looked at this 2 classes ago. But we want to convert this so that we can actually use templates instead. So let's start with the home page, the gallery controller that's just, you know, localhost 8080. That's what this is. We got display homepage is the controller. So I'm going to start by taking off response body. And that also means I don't need this import statement up there anymore. And so I'm going to take, you know, this content here out of here. And I'm just going to return index. And because it already has the mapping, sorry, okay, yeah, let me be careful here. This is important. Mapping is about routing. It's about the address in the browser. This down here is about your file structure. It's about this, you know, resources / templates. So what we need to do here is we need to create a directory called templates. And then we'll be able to create an index file here. And that's what this is referring to. And if you didn't go through the process yet, as part of the, you know, going through the chapter and the exercises of setting up this Thymeleaf template in here for IntelliJ, you're definitely going to want to do that. It makes it easier because now that I've got this in here, I don't have to start with a basic HTML file anymore. And it will already have this up here that I need in order for it to designate it as a Thymeleaf template. Okay, so essentially, I'm going to have, you know, the content that I pulled from that is I'm going to want to kind of put in here, but I have to clean it up a little bit because, you know, we're no longer concatenating strings, right? So I'm just going to kind of take that off and then all of that should be fine. This, you know, still works. It's just a reference to another page with the routing. And then I could, you know, change this title to say, you know, Midtown Art Gallery. And then, you know, maybe I just change this to say welcome. If I can spell it right. Wow. There we go. And let's see, is there anything else I want to do this yet? We're going to be like adding to this and modifying it a number of like all of these templates we're creating. We're going to keep working on them as we introduce new concepts. But for now, all I really want to do is just focus on switching from the template to I'm sorry, from the controller being a response body to actually using this template and returning this file. So this should work. Let's go ahead and get this up and running. Okay, and I can actually just go right here to localhost. Oh, it opened it in my other screen. So let me move it up here. Let me grab it and put it right here. Okay. And by the way, you know, I did initialize this project when I created it. I used the, you know, start.spring.io and, you know, did all the usual stuff. But I also made sure that I included Thymeleaf here. If you forget to do this, you can always add the dependency later. If you go into the build.gradle file, you know, it looks just like the one that says Spring Boot Starter Web. You just use Thymeleaf instead of web. So you can always add it after the fact and then just, you know, rerun the build and it'll incorporate it. Okay, I meant to say that earlier and I forgot. So here we go. Welcome, view our collection of fine art. So we have the exact same content. It's just coming from this template now because our controller no longer has the response body annotation and instead it's just pointing to this template. And Spring Boot knows what to do. It knows if you just say, you know, this is what I want, it's going to go to that templates folder and it's going to look for that. So that's good. So we got that. So let's go ahead and take care of the other two. We've got the display collection page and display add art form controllers here, these handlers. And both of these are just for displaying content on the page. They're both GET requests. So it's the same basic deal. I'm just going to pull this content out of here. And in this case, if it's just collection, I'm just going to say collection / let me make sure I get this right. These references are important, like how you do this, but because it already knows to go to templates, you should be able to just do collection slash, I want to make sure I do it the same way that I did it before. Yeah. So what that means then, I have to actually have a subdirectory over here called collection. And inside that, I'm going to have an index file, which is, the name the file needs to be if you want to be able to just go to slash, localhost 8080 / collection without having to add an actual, file. Index takes care of that. Okay. And here I can, insert this. I actually am going to, let's see, I may make this a little simpler on myself. Yeah, no, that'll do. So, maybe I have like an H2 here, collection. And I can display this here, but I of course have to clean it up. And so that'll take a second, sorry. There are some things I can't shortcut on unless I have multiple versions of my solution, which I don't. Ultimately, we're going to do this by looping over a collection, but for now it's hard coded, just for the sake of being able to, show that it will actually display on the page the way we want it to. And this needs to be over there. Okay, so I've got collection / index. So if I go back over to my controller, I just, collection / index. So now this should point at that. I still do have this response body up here though, and so I have to take this off. And that of course means if I go to the form right now, it'll be broken, but I'm not going to, so it's okay. So I'm going to stop and rerun this. And then now when I go here, it looks like I still have a little bit of concatenation leftovers here. Oh, I'm in the wrong file. That's why. Looking at them like, where is it? Oh, I see it. Yeah. Okay. So, but you see the content on the page. I've got a nice little unordered list there. So we're getting there, right? This is the idea. And so the last one, of course, is the form. We'll do the same thing. We'll take this collection over here, take this form out of here, and this one I will actually probably just cut and paste from my solution because it'll be faster. And this one I'm going to say, is going to live at collection / add art form. And so we'll create that file. Thymeleaf add art form. And then I will go get it. Oh yeah, that's something else that I'm going to do. I'm going to have, ultimately, we're going to land up with a little bit of CSS. And so like things like, wrapping this in main, that's going to become important, but we'll get there. Okay. So I've changed this form a little bit from last time you saw it because we're not going to be like looking up things by style yet. That'll come later. If this form is just meant to add something. So it just says, new art, what is it called? And so, the name of the input is artwork, which will correspond with the query parameter. And the submit button just says add to collection. So all I'm doing right now is just displaying it on the page. The functionality of being able to submit the form is going to come separately. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I just want to make sure that this is going to look the way we expect it to look. So let's go back over here and make sure this is done. Collection add art form. Okay. Okay. So if I actually go to /add here, since I don't have a link, yeah, there we go. Okay, so we now have all three of the existing pages displaying through these templates that we created, index, and then the collections index, and then the add art form. So we're in good shape here. I'm gonna get these in a different order. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. Yeah, okay, so much like I did before, I'm going to give you like one page that has like all of the different things at once, but we're going to talk about them, introduce them a little bit at a time. But I wanted you to kind of have a quick reference of seeing everything here. So first of all, most Thymeleaf syntax is in the form of attributes inside existing HTML elements. So, th text is just for, dynamic display of content that's coming from the controller. Th each is where you actually say, okay, I'm going to create this local variable that's going to come out of this collection that's coming from the controller. Th if is a conditional, unless is another way of type of conditional. Fragment is for like a block of code that's reusable that you can define somewhere else and then just plug into different templates, and then replaces part of the syntax that you need in order to do that. And then source and href are for static resources, and we're gonna get to all of this. But just so you can kind of see what the common threads here, Thymeleaf has these things called expressions, and that looks pretty familiar to you because it looks very similar to a placeholder in JavaScript, right, for template literals. That's your variable expression. Anytime you're bringing some sort of variable in from the controller. And this one with the little tilde in the front is a fragment expression. I'll talk more about that in a bit. And then the one with the @ symbol is for static resources, for links. So we'll get to all of this, but I wanted to kind of show you where all the the commonalities are. And then the other thing is there's this thing called th block that's actually not an attribute, it's an element. And it's a wrapper that kind of, lets you, it's a little bit like if you remember ng container from Angular, it's the same concept. It's like if you don't want something structural like a div that actually has styling implications, and you just need to wrap for multiple purposes. It could be for looping or for conditionals or fragments even. You can just use this th block instead, and it has 0 styling implications for the page, but it does like help you group things together. Okay. So we'll see how all of this works, but that's the overview of all of the syntax that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so now it's time to start doing this dynamic data thing, right? When you're passing data from a controller to a template, you use the handler, which is another term for the controller method, and you just have to give it a parameter of the model class. And this is just something that's built in. And then once you have that model, it will let you use these methods like add attribute to declare, this is what I want the variable name to be inside the template, and here's the value that I'm sending it through the controller. And then you make sure you pass that variable name as a string. So here's an example. We have a get mapping handler, and so we've got this parameter up here that's the class model, and the parameter itself is just called model lowercase. And I want to point out right now before I forget, this has nothing to do with the model in MVC. It just happens to be what they called it as the thing that the class that helps you pass things from a controller to a view. So just keep that in mind. When we use this, it has nothing to do with the model stuff that we're going to talk about next week. It's just for this purpose. So once you have that in here, then Spring can use it, and you have this, model.add attribute. So clearly for this example, which we're not going to code this is like a really generic example. Let's say we want to have 3 different pieces of information that we want to pass down to our template: first name, username, and email. This is how we do it. And yeah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. Arrested Development. I love it. Okay. It's my favorite thing from Arrested Development. Okay. So yeah, so you have this, and you make sure you put them in quotes, but then in the template, of course, you'll actually just use them as a variable there. And then these would be the values you're trying to pass down. And I've hard coded them here, but you might actually be putting variables here if it's coming from somewhere else, like data from a database, or we're actually going to do it a little bit later with our collection, where we're passing our collection down to our of a list of artworks. And then you just, you still have your return at the end, where you're returning to the template. which in this case, my imaginary template is, a profile page that's in a subdirectory called user inside templates. So that's the basic idea. The parameter, the model method, add attribute, the variable name is a string, and then whatever values you want to display for each of those variable names to show up in the template. Okay, so I think, let me see. Sorry, yes. So then on the template side, before we go and do some live coding here, on the template side, what that looks like then is you use the th text attribute inside, any sort of HTML thing you want. It can be a P, it can be a div, it can be an H3, it can be whatever. In this case, I'm using them all in paragraph ones, but you're not limited to that. So use the attribute and then assign it with a variable expression. Again, that's the $sign with the fancy braces. And that's where the data from the controller comes. And then in between your tags, if you have any sort of text there, if there's something coming from the controller, it's going to be replaced, but that gives you a way to have a default value just in case you had something that wasn't passed in for some reason and it wasn't required. So let's label these again. So the attribute is th text. The variable expressions are where you give the value with the dynamic data. And there's those three variable names that we assigned using that add attribute method: first name, username, and email. And then once the page actually loads, we should, we would see that information actually display on the page. So yeah, and there again, that hello would be a default value that, this is kind of a bad example because this would be a situation where we would probably require this, but if we didn't have it, then it would just display hello. Okay, so now that we've talked about both the controller side and the template side, let's go see what that looks like in our project. Yeah, so let's start with this page. Let's see. Let's say that on our template for the main page, index.html for localhost 8080, let's say that maybe I want to pass in the title here as a a dynamic value is what I'm trying to say. So I could actually take this out and put something in here instead, but I need to actually define what that is going to be. So let's say we would, I'm going to do this kind of backwards, but we'll set it in here first. So we use there's the variable expression syntax, right? And then in here, I'm just going to say title. So that means that in our controller, we need to create an attribute called title to pass down a value. So we'll come back over here and I add model, and it imported there from org.springframework.ui.model. And then that's the class. And then I give it the parameter and name there, model. So now we have something we can actually say model.add attributes. And then we said that the attribute was actually, the attribute name is going to be title, and the value we're going to say is Midtown Art Gallery. Okay. And then we just return it, and Spring does all the magic to say, okay, you want something, you're going to have a variable called title in your template. This is the value. I'll do it, no problem. So if we go now over and start this back up. I have to go back to the main page, actually. This is going to be easier when we have some more stuff in place, but that's okay. Okay, so you can see up here in the title, it says Midtown Art Gallery. That's what that title does. It puts, it's the behind the scenes stuff. It's up there on the tab. So that's just one example of how we can do that. We're going to do a little bit more of this as we get into the forms in a little bit. Trying to see, let's see if I had anything else in the collection page. Nope, not until we do the next thing. So let's go talk about looping. Okay, so to iterate over a collection with Thymeleaf, use this attribute th each, and then you set a local variable followed by colon, and then followed by a variable expression that has the collection from the controller. Now, that's important because you don't put the entire thing inside the variable expression. The local variable and the colon come ahead of that, and then you do the variable expression with the whatever's coming from the controller. That would be your collection. So if you have a single HTML element, like this first example here, you can place the th each directly on that tag, and then also, use the th text to get whatever you want to display out of that information. But generally speaking, it's a better practice to put the th each on something else. And if you don't want any sort of styling implications, you can just use th block. It'll wrap around that content and separate out the looping behavior from the dynamic content of the th text. And then, of course, what's really nice about that is that it also gives you a chance to have multiple things that you're looping over. You definitely need to use the th block if you're going to do that. And so this example here, the second one I've got, where I've got like, both an H3 with the book title, and then I've got a paragraph that has, this thing I've pieced together where I say authored by book.author and, this number of pages or whatever. Harkening back to our old book examples, which we're not going to code, but I figured it made a good example for this. Okay. So there's those attributes again, the th each, and the local variable that you would use is book, but the variable expression that brings the collection over from the controller is the second part after the colon. And then there's that wrapper element, th block, that we're using for the behavior, the looping behavior, and then just using th text for the content on everything that's inside of that. So we're going to do that. But part of what we have to do in order to do that is to actually have a collection to work with, right? So if we come over here and we look at our collection page, we've got this hard-coded thing here with, this list of paintings. And but we don't want to do it this way anymore. So first thing we need to do is come over to our controller and say, we're going to have some content here. And so I can actually, create a list. And it's just going to be a list of strings. And yes, I did want you to import that. Thanks. Okay. And let's call it art collection. And we'll just make it a new array list. And we could actually, if you want to be able to initialize it with some things, there are several ways to do it. One way is to bring in the arrays class. Nope, that was not it. There we go. Arrays and say as list, and then you can actually just put the strings in. And so we could have, this list that I had. And it's going to be a little bit messy here, but give me a second. Again, I don't actually have this in my final solution because we're going to change it up again in a bit, but that's okay. Okay, let's just do those three. How's that? That's enough. Okay. Ian, you got a question?
What exactly is a list in Java?
It's just it's like an array list. This is a habit that you'll get into when we start working with models and stuff in the next week or so. And there's things that come with a list that work really well with all the functionality that we're going to need for the way we're working with data. And I honestly can't even articulate it for you right now, but I will explain it more when we get there. It'll make more sense at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So and we could very well, just do this as an array list now. It's fine. We could do that and not use a list. But once we start getting into some of the more advanced stuff with data, we're going to probably start using a list there. Okay, so yeah, so I've got this art collection and it's created, good, no problem. It gives us some data to start with. And then I can just say, okay, but I'm going to need to have my model, right? Have to actually have something to work with. Okay. So now I can say model.addAttribute, and then I can say I want to call this collection. I'm just going to call it collection. And let me make sure that is what, yeah, that's what I called it. Okay. And then I will pass in art collection. So there's the data we want to pass through. So I'm putting it here. This is what we want to call it. This is the variable that we'll use in the template. So now that we've got that established, Spring will pass it on down to our index page in the collection subdirectory. So now we come over here, we can actually use it. So this is where we're going to need to have, this looping, right? Your first inclination might be to put the th each on the UL tag here. Can anybody tell me why you would want to do that?
Because it'll create a list for each one of the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nathan, I stepped on you there.
No. That
You're
was
just fine.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It includes the tag that you're putting it on. So if you do that, you'll end up with a whole bunch of unordered lists with exactly one item of each. So a better way to do it, you could put it on the LI, but like we said, before, we're going to actually make use of this so we can separate the looping behavior from the content. And so I'll say th each equals, and then inside of here, that's fine. This is where we'll say that we want it to be, like artwork is the local variable. I'll have a colon, and then I'll use this variable expression syntax to actually bring in that collection variable that we established in the controller. And that will bring in the list. This will allow us to look at them one at a time. So now inside here, I'll do the LI and have the th text to just display the artwork. And since it's just a string, that's all we need. And we don't need anything between it now, because this is going to actually take that text and place it in here. And it's complaining at me about custom HTML tags. You can always just add them in. I already did it in the other branch. I'm wondering if it might be something. It's because I'm in a different branch than I was in originally. That's interesting. I was kind of hoping it would just save it with IntelliJ, like, globally, but apparently not. There's probably a way to do that. Okay, so yeah, so we have this thing now. It's going to display them dynamically. Let's go check it out and see if we get what we're expecting. Okay, so come back over here. And we have to go to the collection page. There it is. Okay. So we have our little list now, and it's being created dynamically because of th each in combination with th text. Does anybody have any questions about this before we move on? Okay, cool. All right. So we're getting there. Let's come back over here, and we're going to go to talking about conditionals. So there's two different attributes, th-if and th-unless. That basically just decides whether content is inserted. And I use the word inserted because literally, if it evaluates to false for th-if, it's not even in the DOM. Like, it's just not even there. So this is different than saying that something has like a hidden visibility where it's there, but you just can't see it. This literally just does not put it in at all. So, which is nice because it saves memory, it's faster. So, template, all of that is evaluated, and then when it renders, it's pretty clean. So while you can usually imagine this would be Booleans, either Boolean variables or Boolean expressions that you evaluate, you can also have some non-Boolean types that are truthy or falsy. Remember, we talked about that a lot in Unit 1. And this is a good example over here. I'm going to show you in a second. But I also want to talk about these logical operators. So if you want to use like and, you literally use and lowercase, or is or. Not, you can use the bang, or you can also just use the word not. So in these examples, you can see we've got the attributes, and then we've got these, Boolean variable. And this is a very common application for this type of concept where, you've got a website that has, users can log into it. And you have certain things that you want to show them if they're logged in, and then other things you'd want to show them if they're not. So you can use, this kind of an approach to say, depending on whether they're logged in or not, show them either this or this. And then down here, I've got this idea that, we don't want to display this information unless we have both a list exists and it has a size of some kind. So here we've got these truthy, falsy, the first one is a list. Like, does the list exist or is it null? And then if it does exist, we also want to verify that it actually has at least one item in it. Otherwise, we don't want to display this. So that's a good example, a very common example of using something other than a Boolean that evaluates to true or false, just by virtue of existing or not. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So let's look at an example here. We already have a very obvious example here because we are doing exactly that. We have a list, and what if the list doesn't have anything in it? We probably want to display something else on the page instead. So I'm going to actually mix this up a little bit, and here I'm going to say that we're going to use th unless, and we're going to look for collection. And so I'll say and notice something I meant to point out on the slide but didn't. Notice that and is not part of one of these variable expressions. It's between two variable expressions. That's actually important. It will break if you don't do it this way. So yeah, so we've got the first variable expression just looks for this, and then we use and another variable expression that checks the size. So if both of those things evaluate to true, then this won't show. But if they don't, then we will actually have, an empty collection is not much of a collection at all. I'm being judgy here, I guess, about my little thing. Okay, so and then we could maybe have our little like maybe also put something that's a little link to the form, because I didn't have that before and it would be nice to have a link. So I'm going to add this too while we're here, and I don't know what is happening right now. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to add, man, I hate it. What was that? Nope. /collection /add. All right, there it is. A work of art to the collection. Okay, so I'm just putting that there underneath, and that basically will serve. It's like, this, if there's nothing to loop over, then this won't be there at all. And I'm going to take that little part off. So that's fine. It kind of takes care of itself. But either way, it's nice to have this little link down here to say, here's the form if you want to go add something. And that kind of works whether this is displaying or not. So we can try this out. Barring any typos. This should work. Okay, so we have something in here, which means, it's not showing up, which is what we want. So what happens if we don't have anything in there. So let's come back over here to the collection controller and let's, take this out, right? And so instead we're just initializing an empty array list that doesn't already have anything in it. I'll start it back up. Okay, now we have, an empty collection is not much of a collection at all, and it invites us to go and add something, which we can't do yet because we haven't wired up the rest of our form, but we're going to take care of that shortly. Okay, so forms. The thing to really understand about forms is that they have two parts. And you have to handle both the display of the form on the page, and then you also have to handle what happens when the information comes back. We have to process that, and then we have to send them somewhere. And the way we did it a couple classes ago, we actually use the action on the form to send them to a different controller. And we're sort of going to do that, but we're actually going to have the action point back to the same route. We're going to give it the exact same route and then have two handlers, one for get, one for post. And then what'll happen is at the very end of the post handler, we'll just redirect them with the return statement rather than sending them to a template. And the nice thing about that is because then it'll update the data that's going to be displayed on the page that may include that data, and you'll see how this works. And just so, just to understand this relationship between the view and the controller, this is kind of what that looks like, right? First, it requests, okay, you're on the form page. It needs to know what to display for the form. So it does that request, sends that back. Then the user actually submits the form. That's a post request that comes back. And then the controller processes all of that and says, okay, and here I'm going to redirect you to a different page now, and that goes back to the browser, and that's where what the user sees next. So that's kind of the process. So if we come over, I can't remember if I have another slide for this. Give me a second. Nope, we'll do that in a minute. Okay, yeah, so let's do this. So we're going to come down here. We've already got our get mapping for /add. We're going to do a post mapping for /add. Okay, and this will be public string, and this is going to say process add art form. I got in the habit when I was a student of naming them this way, display or process, and it really helped me understand the difference of what the controller's purpose was and when it gets called. And you'll notice I keep putting, these, things in here because it helps me see when those calls come through from the browser. What exactly happened. And so this is me kind of, helping you see what lines up with what, right? So I can actually, got to go back to a different page here. I'm going to copy that, make it faster. Yeah. And this is where we, you remember with query parameters, we have to have this request param annotation. And then we just say string artwork. That's going to be the parameter that we have. And it already exists, right? Because that's what we called it. We named it on the form. If we look at the form, we named that input artwork, which means that's what the query parameter is going to be. So it needs to line up. So that's the parameter that's coming in. And then we have this, using it to print something to our log. But then we also can then say, we want to go to the art collection and add the artwork. But we have a problem because this list doesn't exist outside of here. Right now, its scope is inside this one handler over here. So we're going to move it outside. And in order to do that, we have to make it static. So I'll make it private static. And then for that matter, we can make it final because we don't want it overwritten. Then it already exists. So this one can still reference it, but we also can access it from down here. So we can then say art collection and add, because it's just an array list, and we'll give it artwork to add that string to the list. Okay, so then of course the last thing is we need a return statement. And this is where we use this redirect. And in this case, we're going to use this collection to specify that we're actually, going to this. And this can get a little bit screwy depending on whether you have the slashes in here or not. So basically the rule is if you don't have a slash here because it's already taken care of here, then you need to have it here because this is tacking on to that, if that makes sense. It's going to send back to this page. So that's a very straightforward way of doing that. And this should work. So now, when we make that post request from the thing, because we have this method set as post, it's going to come in and look and find the correct handler. It's going to find this one. It's going to pass in the artwork from the form input, and then we can add it to the list, and then it'll redirect to collection. And so the next thing we see should be, it's going to take art collection now that has been updated and pass it down again to this template. And then we should see the new item on the page as a result. That makes sense? Let's actually see it in practice. I'll stop this and restart it. Okay. So we have no collection, but we're going to add one. So let's say Mona Lisa. There it is. Now I can add another one and say, what clumped the kiss, right? We could have, girl with a pearl earring, add a collection. Yeah. And so, it keeps building it because every time it redirects back, it runs this and passes this back through that's been updated up here. Something else we could do if we want is we could actually say, before you redirect that, or for that matter, we could do it here. We could say, use that. Remember how you can tap into the collections class to sort? We could actually sort it so that they're always in alphabetical order. And yeah, that should make it where now watch what happens, because we don't have persistence yet. We're not working with databases. As soon as I stop this application and restart this application, we now have no information. We have to start over. That's okay. This is part of the process. You use your little manual testing. Okay, and now I'll add, oops, there we go. Circle with a pearl earring. And we see that one ends up being first because it sorted it. Okay, fun little trick. Okay, good things to think about, how things display on the page. Always be thinking forward, right? All right, so that pretty much takes care of that. So we now have forms working successfully. Awesome. So let's talk about fragments. I know we're getting close on time, but we got a couple more things to get through, and then I'll send you on your way. So fragments are awesome because you might have things like your head and a header on the page and things like that you want to be exactly the same, but you only want to have to change the content in one place. So you can create a template and have these fragments in there and use these little attributes, th fragment and th replace, kind of in tandem with one another to insert it into the code, essentially. And so you put something in there and then just replace it. And it's very common to use a template called fragments, or maybe you might call it common. You want things in there that are going to be something you use in a lot of different places. So name it whatever you want. But once you do, you'll be able to reference it. So first you define a block of code as the fragment itself in that file, and you use th fragment to give it a name. And then in the other template, you're going to have some sort of tag there, but use th replace and then tell it, here's where it's located and here's its name. Go get it and replace this with that. And it doesn't even matter that it's actually like two different types of tags, because when it gets here, it's going to be a div because that's what the fragment is. So I've created this header over in the fragments file. So to replace it, and this is where we use, this is new, by the way. Literally a few weeks ago, they updated Thymeleaf, and they have deprecated using this expression here without it being wrapped in this special syntax. So that's why I'm showing it to you, because this is new. It's so new that Launch Code hasn't even added it in the textbook yet. It's certainly not in Chris Bay's video. So just be aware that if you don't use it, IntelliJ will probably yell at you just a little bit. It won't break the program, but they'll be like, it's deprecated. And if you're asking yourself, what does that mean, deprecated? This is something that happens, right? They release new versions of things and they say, we're phasing this out. That's basically what that means. So, you know, you've been able to do this up until now, but now we are making it where in the future, we're going to take this away. So for now, we're saying it's deprecated so that everybody can update their code, and then eventually it just won't even be allowed. So this is kind of where they talk about it right here. So instead of just like, you know, template and : fragment, you actually have to have that special syntax. So enough about that. So again, the attributes are th fragment for the fragment itself and th replace for where you want to put it. And that fragment name has to match, of course. And then the file is this, you know, fragments file. That's where that goes. And that entire thing is called a fragment expression. So let's do this quickly. I want to create a new file, and I'm going to put it directly into templates here. Make it a Thymeleaf file, and I'm going to call it fragments. And then I will do, I'm going to add some things to this head so that it can be the same across all of the files. And so I'm going to make this a fragment and just call it head. And that'll take care of that. And that way, every single page can have the title Midtown Art Gallery. And then let's see, is there anything else I wanted to do with that? Hold on. Oh yeah. Eventually we will actually also add in the link to our CSS file in here, and then that'll be automatically a part of every single page because it'll have this fragment. So we'll get there in a minute. And then I also want to have a header at the top of my page. I'm going to copy it in for the sake of time. But down here in the body, I'm going to establish another fragment. And just because it's here doesn't mean it's automatically going to be on all the other pages. It just means we've defined it so that we can pull it into other pages. And what I've basically done is say, I want this header across the top that's going to have the name of the thing and have a nav bar with some links. And, you know, a couple of them are dummies about in a contact, but I've got legitimate links for home and collection, right? That gives us a nice way to have that consistency across the top of every page. So that fragment I have called header. So now we can go over into our other templates and start adding them. So here, instead of having this content in between here and here, I will use th replace and then use that fragment expression here and say that we want to go to fragments. That's the file in templates. And then we want to go get the fragment called head. So I can do that there. And then here, ahead of everything else, I can actually say, I want a header and I want to replace it with, and then I can use this exact same thing there. Oh, there we go. Except for I want to call it header, right? Similar names, not the same thing. And then all of the content that's inside of that is now going to show up here as part of this page. So I want to go and I want to add both of these to all, you know, to the other pages as well. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it at the top of here and also above main here. We're going to have to clean some of these pages up in a second, but we will. And then I want to do the same thing for head. So I'm going to just copy what I put into the home page here and replace that. And then come over here and replace this. And of course, that also means I really don't need this anymore because we've taken care of it elsewhere. Okay, so let's stop and start and see if I got it all straight. All right, I'm going to start by going to the main homepage. Yeah, there it is. It's not styled yet, so it doesn't look very pretty, but it's there. Midtown Art Gallery, home, about, collection, contact. If I click on collection, it's there again because we inserted it into that file as well. If I go over to the form, it's there as well. And then of course you also notice that all of them have that Midtown Art Gallery title now up here too, no matter where we are. Okay, so that's the beautiful thing about fragments. Really, really helpful. It's kind of as close as Thymeleaf gets to having a kind of component style architecture. It's about, you know, the way that like Angular and React do. It's about as close as you can get. Okay, so linking to static resources. Now, this is not just links in general, it's specifically links to files that you have as a part of your project that are in a specific location. So we can use src source or href and link to these files. And they need to be in the static folder inside resources specifically. And that's where it knows to go get them. And then all you have to do is use a relative path from static and just use that link expression syntax with the @ symbol to provide it with these special tags. And it's really a major shortcut because no matter where you are, you have an absolute position and then you can give something relative to that position. And you don't have to think about the whole, you know, how many directories back am I having to go to reference this file? So again, you have the attributes, you have the link expressions. And in this case, this is actually very similar to what I have done for this project. So we can come over and take a look at this. I set in a static folder and I set in a CSS folder and put a style.css in there. And I set an images folder and put gallery2.png. So all I have to do now is everybody check their mics. Got an open mic somewhere. We just have to add these in now. So I'm going to go back to our fragment first because we can add this CSS in there. And this is just, you know, typical link for this sort of thing. And we'll use the href and we'll use the link expression and just do /css/styles because this is where it is in the static folder. And then we still have to have the style sheet value there for the rel attribute. And then this is a self-closing tag. So just make sure you get that slash in there. All right, I'm gonna stop it and restart it. And things are immediately gonna look a lot nicer if it works. Yeah, it's getting there. So I still have some issues with things like this because I didn't put the main. So if we go over and look at the file, I can show it to you real quick. Yeah, I've got this some padding in this, you know, main element. So I just have to go into my templates and make sure I'm using that where I intend to. So just put main in there. I can take this and move these up. That'll clean that up. And then I think I form collection. I got to do it here too. Okay. Hold these. All right. Yeah, all of this. Okay. Stop and restart. All right. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, it looks a little nicer. Okay, and then the last thing to do is we'll place an image on that main page. So I'm going to go to the index page, and right here after main, I think is where I intended to do it. Let me double check. I have to be in the right file first. Yes, after main, I'm going to add an image because I want to be able to take it all the way to the edges of the page. And main has that padding as we just saw. So this is where we use the th source attribute. But again, we use the special link expression syntax. And then in there, I just need to reference images and then gallery2.png, so the file name. And I also want to set the width to be 100% so that the browser immediately holds that space and puts the picture in it. Let's go see. There we go. We've got ourselves a nice little thing. We've got our links up here where we can kind of go back and forth. This gets us to our form. Yeah, and it's adding stuff here. And so yeah, we're good. Everything looks good. Okay. Real quick, just introduction to the studio. You're going to do some fun things just like that, except for you don't have to start from scratch. They actually have starter code for you to fork and clone, and they've got a template in there for you to start with, but you're going to start making modifications to display data dynamically, iterate over a list, use some of those, NG or not NGF, wow, THF, wrong framework, and make a fun little thing. So, kind of this little form for, manicures and pedicures and all this sort of thing. So it walks you right through it. And when you get done, you should have something that, looks a little bit like this, depending on what they chose. So then there's some fun bonus missions if you have time, but we will come back and look at this. Why don't we come back at like 8:05, give you guys a little bit of time back. So yeah, and then next week we're talking about all things models. We will do model binding on Monday and validation and enumerations on Thursday. And then things will start to really come together with kind of how you use Java classes in conjunction with the view and the controllers and all of that. It's going to be good. All right, you guys head off. I will see you at 8:05.
Thanks a lot, Carrie.